Overheard my girlfriend say, "I'm just using him to make my ex jealous. He's so pathetic and desperate. Perfect for my plan." She added, "He actually thinks I care about him. Men are so easy to manipulate." So I walked out. Now her ex dumped her and she's begging me back. All right, Reddit. This happened about a month ago, but I'm finally ready to write it all out. Still feels pretty unreal thinking back on everything that went down. Probably going to be a long post, so grab some coffee or whatever. I, 29 male, run a small electrical contracting business. Been dating Savannah, 26 female, for 6 months. She works remote marketing. Things seemed pretty serious. I'd been helping with her rent sometimes and doing repairs around her apartment. Even bought her a promise ring last month. Thought we were building something real. Last Tuesday, I was over at her place fixing her kitchen sink. Thing had been dripping for weeks, and her landlord is completely useless, so I told her I'd handle it. This wasn't the first repair I'd done for her either. Never charged her anything obviously since we were dating. Just felt good to be helpful, and she always seemed really grateful. I had my tools spread out on the kitchen floor and was lying on my back under the sink when Savannah got a call for some work meeting. She went into her bedroom to take the call, but didn't fully close the door. Sound carries really easy in that place. At first, I wasn't paying attention to what she was saying. Just background noise while I focused on this stubborn pipe connection. Her work calls are usually pretty boring anyway. But then I heard her mention my name and my ears perked up. She was talking to someone named Madeline, probably a coworker or supervisor. They were discussing weekend plans and Savannah brought up our brunch date from Saturday. Normal couple stuff you'd mention to friends at work. "Ashton's your boyfriend, right? The electrician guy?" Madeline asked. "Yeah, that's him. He's sweet." What caught my attention was her tone when she talked about me. There was this weird distance to it, like she was describing someone she barely knew instead of her boyfriend of 6 months. She called me sweet, but in the same way you'd describe a neighbor's dog or something. Just felt off. The conversation shifted, and Madeline asked something about whether things were getting serious between us. That's when everything went sideways. Savannah started talking about the promise ring I'd given her a few weeks back, and how I was always bringing up moving in together and meeting her family. But the way she described it made it sound like I was some clingy guy who was way more invested than she was. I mean, he thinks so. He gave me this promise ring a few weeks ago and talks about us moving in together all the time. But you don't feel the same way? Then she dropped the first bomb. She told Madeline that I wasn't really what she wanted long term. That I was good for right now, but not someone she saw a future with. Said I was reliable and treated her well, but that I wasn't the one she actually loved. "It's complicated, Madeline. Ashton's great on paper, you know. But he's not Noah." My stomach started churning. Noah, the finance guy who dumped her 8 months ago. Turns out he'd been texting her for the past month asking questions about our relationship and whether she was really happy. The timing lined up perfectly with when I gave her the ring. While I thought we were taking the next step forward, her ex was circling back, trying to figure out if he wanted her again. "Noah's been texting me lately," she told Madeline. "Asking how I'm doing, if I'm happy, stuff like that." What really destroyed me was when she admitted that the whole relationship with me was basically a setup to make Noah jealous. She'd been showing him that other men wanted her and treated her well, posting pictures of us together on social media, talking about how happy she was, all designed to make her ex realize what he'd lost. "Are you going to meet him?" Madeline asked. Of course I'm going to meet him. This whole thing with Ashton was leading up to this moment. The casual way she talked about using me was probably the worst part. Like I was some kind of emotional placeholder, while she figured out if her real choice wanted her back. She told Madeline that I worshipped the ground she walked on and would probably just accept whatever explanation she gave me when she eventually dumped me. "He's so understanding about everything, he'll probably just accept it and give me time," she said, about how she'd break up with me. She wasn't wrong about that either. If she'd come to me a week ago and said she needed space to work on herself, I probably would have believed her. Would have waited around like an idiot, hoping she'd figure things out and come back to me. But hearing her actual plan laid out in detail changed everything. 6 months of my life thinking we were building something real together. All the money I'd spent taking her out, helping with rent when she was short, buying her that ring. All the time I'd invested fixing things around her apartment, being there when she needed someone to talk to, making myself available whenever she called. None of it meant anything to her, except as props in her plan to manipulate her ex into wanting her back. I finished the sink repair while she was still on the call, my hands shaking the whole time. Had to be careful not to make noise and let her know I'd been listening. The conversation went on for another 10 minutes with her and Madeline discussing the logistics of meeting up with Noah and how she'd handle breaking up with me if things worked out with him. When I finally heard her wrapping up the meeting, I was sitting there on her kitchen floor surrounded by my tools, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to just leave and never speak to her again. Ghost her the same way she was planning to ghost me. But that felt too easy. She'd been playing games for months while I'd been genuine about everything. Used my feelings against me while pretending to care. Made me look like an idiot to anyone who might have known what was really going on. Nah, if Savannah wanted to play games, we could play games. But I was going to make sure I won. I heard her laptop close and footsteps coming toward the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway with this fake smile, probably getting ready to act like the loving girlfriend again. Hey babe, how's the sink coming along? I stood up and looked right at her. I heard your call, Savannah. The whole thing. About Noah. About using me. About how I'm just your little puppy dog who worships you? Her face went completely white, like all the blood just drained out of it in 2 seconds. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked like someone had just told her the building was on fire. Ashton, I can explain. Nah, no explanations needed. Actually, this works out perfectly. I pulled out my phone and held it up. You're gonna text Noah right now and tell him you want to get back together. I'll wait. That snapped her out of the shock. What? No, Ashton, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You've been playing games for 6 months while I've been actually caring about you. So let's end the game. Text him. She started backing toward the living room like I was going to chase her or something. I can't just... It's not that simple. Why not? You just told Madeline it's working, that he's been texting you all week asking about us. So text him back. Tell him you're dumping the guy who worships the ground you walk on and you want to be with him. The silence stretched out forever. She's standing there staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Her hands were shaking and she kept opening her mouth to say something, then closing it again. I could see the panic in her eyes. She couldn't do it, because deep down she knew Noah was just messing with her head. He wasn't ready to commit to anything. He was just curious about whether he still had power over her. And she knew that if she actually tried to cash in her chips with him, he'd probably just say he was flattered but not interested. All her confidence from the phone call was gone. The woman who'd been so sure she had both of us wrapped around her finger couldn't even send a simple text. That's what I thought. I started loading my tools back into the box, making sure to take my time with it. Let her stand there and sweat while I organized everything nice and neat. She kept starting to say something, then stopping herself, probably trying to figure out what lie would work best. Since you can't even commit to your own manipulation, I'll make this easy for you. I walked past her toward the electrical panel by the front door. She followed behind me asking what I was doing, voice getting higher and more panicked. I opened up the panel and put my hand on the main breaker. Ashton, what are you doing? I'm not your electrician anymore. That's a job for someone who actually wants to be there. I flipped the main breaker and the whole apartment went dark. Every light, every appliance, everything just died. Even her router and modem since they were plugged into regular outlets. Ashton, what the hell? Try calling Noah. Maybe he knows how to fix things, or maybe he'll just string you along some more. I grabbed my toolbox and headed for the door. She was stumbling around in the dark, trying to find her phone, probably realizing that her laptop was dead too, and she might have more work calls later. You can't just leave me without power? Watch me. Good luck explaining to your next Zoom call why you're sitting in the dark. I walked out and locked the door behind me. Could hear her inside yelling my name and banging on the door, but I just kept walking to my truck. My hands were still shaking, but it felt good. Really good. She wanted to treat me like I was disposable? Fine. But she could deal with the consequences of her own choices. I got home and sat in my driveway for a few minutes, just processing everything. 6 months of thinking I'd found someone special, and it was all fake. Every dinner where she seemed interested in my work, every time she thanked me for helping with something around her apartment, every sweet text or social media post, all of it was just her playing a role while she waited for her ex to want her back. My phone started buzzing about 5 minutes after I got inside. Text after text from Savannah. At first, they were panicked messages about the power being out and how she had work calls and couldn't see anything. Then they turned into apologies and explanations about how I misunderstood what she meant on the call. I read the first few just to see how she'd try to spin it. Lots of, you don't understand, and it's not what it sounded like, and we need to talk about this like adults. Classic manipulation tactics trying to make me feel like I was overreacting. The last one I read before blocking her number said she was sorry for hurting me, but that I was being childish and vindictive, that what I did was cruel, and she never would have expected that from me. That one made me laugh. She spent 6 months using me as an emotional placeholder, and I was the cruel one for not sticking around to be her backup plan. I blocked her number and went to bed. Wednesday morning, I woke up feeling better than I had in months. Slept like a rock for the first time in weeks. No girlfriend drama. No more fixing other people's problems for free. Just peace and quiet. The first sign that Savannah wasn't going quietly came around 10 a.m. I was pulling wire through some conduit when my phone started buzzing with texts from my buddy Henry. He wanted to know what the hell happened between me and Savannah because his girlfriend Kelly was asking questions. Apparently, Savannah had called Kelly that morning crying about how I'd snapped and left her stranded without power. She was telling people I'd gone psycho over some misunderstanding and that she was scared to be alone in her apartment, really playing up the victim angle hard. I didn't respond to Henry right away because I was trying to focus on work, but the messages kept coming throughout the day from different people. My cousin Sarah wanted to know if I needed someone to talk to about what happened with my girlfriend. Word was spreading fast, and none of it was flattering to me. By lunchtime, I was getting a clearer picture of Savannah's strategy. She was telling everyone who would listen that I'd had some kind of angry outburst over an innocent phone conversation, that I'd destroyed her apartment's electrical system out of spite and left her in the dark during work hours. Some versions had me screaming at her, others had me throwing tools around her kitchen. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. Savannah had gotten her story out first, and she was a lot better at social manipulation than I was. While I was at work trying to make a living, she was busy rewriting history to make herself look like the victim of an abusive boyfriend instead of someone who got caught using people. The weirdest part was how many people seemed to believe her without asking for my side. Henry had known me for 10 years, but he was still asking if I was dealing with anger issues and whether I needed professional help. It was like 6 months of being a decent boyfriend meant nothing compared to one dramatic story about me going crazy. Savannah knew exactly which buttons to push to make people worry about her and question me. She'd probably done this before with other guys. I thought about defending myself but realized it would just make things worse. Getting into a public argument with her would make me look guilty and give her more ammunition. Besides, anyone who knew me well enough to matter would figure out pretty quick that her story didn't add up. The smart play was to just stay quiet and let her dig her own grave. Thursday brought a new wave of drama. Savannah had apparently spent Wednesday night posting on Instagram and Facebook about her traumatic experience with a controlling ex-boyfriend. She didn't mention me by name, but it was obvious who she was talking about. Lots of vague posts about red flags, trusting your instincts, and being grateful to escape dangerous situations. Her friends were eating it up. The comments were full of people telling her how brave she was and how they'd always had bad feelings about me. Women who'd barely spoken to me at parties were suddenly sharing stories about times I'd seemed off or made them uncomfortable. It was impressive in a sick way. Savannah had turned herself into the survivor of an abusive relationship in less than 48 hours. She was getting sympathy, attention, and validation, while I was being treated like some kind of monster who might snap again at any moment. The funniest part was seeing mutual friends who knew both of us struggle with the cognitive dissonance. They'd spent months hanging out with us as a couple, seeing how normal and happy we seemed together. Now they had to reconcile that with Savannah's claims that I was secretly controlling and dangerous. Most of them chose to believe her version because it was easier than admitting they'd missed obvious warning signs for 6 months. Or maybe they just liked drama, and this was more exciting than accepting that sometimes relationships end badly without anyone being a villain. My phone was basically useless at this point. Constant notifications from people wanting to know what really happened or offering to help me through this difficult time. A few close friends reached out directly to say they didn't believe Savannah's story, but most everyone else seemed to be buying into it. Friday morning, I got a call from my neighbor asking if I was all right, because she'd heard some troubling rumors about me at the grocery store. Apparently, the story had spread beyond just our immediate social circle. Random people in town were talking about the electrician who'd gone crazy and left his girlfriend without power. Savannah had really outdone herself. In 3 days, she'd managed to turn a simple breakup into a cautionary tale about dating dangerous men. She was probably loving every minute of the attention and sympathy she was getting. But here's the thing about lies. They're hard to maintain when people start asking specific questions. And Savannah was about to find out that some folks weren't as easy to manipulate as she thought. The cracks in her story started showing when people who actually knew me well began pointing out inconsistencies. Savannah couldn't explain why she was still living in an apartment with no power 3 days later. If I'd really damaged her electrical system, wouldn't she have called her landlord or an electrician to fix it? Why was she staying in a dark apartment instead of getting help? That's when I realized she probably had no idea how to turn the power back on. She thought I'd broken something instead of just flipping a switch. which meant she'd been sitting in the dark for 3 days, too proud to admit she didn't know how to fix her own electrical panel. The woman who'd been so confident about manipulating two men at once couldn't figure out how to flip a breaker switch. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people expose themselves. The next day started normal enough. My phone had finally stopped buzzing constantly as people moved on to other gossip. I was up on a ladder running cable through drop ceiling tiles when my phone rang around 11 a.m. Unknown number but local area code, so I figured it might be a potential customer. I climbed down and answered. Is this Ashton? Woman's voice, older, sounded pissed off already. Yeah, who's this? This is Savannah's mother. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. I'd met Savannah's parents exactly once at a barbecue back in July. They seemed nice enough. Oh, hi. What can I do for you? You can start by explaining what you did to our daughter. She launched into this whole speech about how disappointed they were in me and how they'd thought I was a decent young man when they met me. Said Savannah had called them crying multiple times over the weekend, telling them about how I'd attacked her and left her stranded without electricity. The way she told it made it sound like I'd beaten Savannah up and trashed her apartment before disappearing. According to her parents, their daughter was traumatized and afraid to be alone. She'd been staying with friends because she was too scared to go back to her own place. I think there might be some miscommunication here. There's no miscommunication, Ashton. Savannah told us exactly what happened. How you flew into a rage over nothing and destroyed her apartment's electrical system. How you screamed at her and made threats before leaving her in the dark. I tried to explain that I'd simply overheard her admitting to using me to make her ex jealous, but her mom wasn't interested in hearing it. She'd already made up her mind about what kind of person I was based on whatever story Savannah had fed them. We thought you were good for her, she continued. Stable, hardworking, someone who could provide for our daughter. We're just grateful she found out what you're really like before you two got more serious. Her dad got on the phone next and the conversation got even worse. He started talking about how he'd trusted me with his daughter and how betrayed he felt. Said he was considering calling the police if I tried to contact Savannah again. Warned me to stay away from their family and suggested I might need professional help for my anger issues. The whole thing lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Two people I genuinely liked and respected were treating me like a criminal based on lies their daughter had told them. They didn't want to hear my side, didn't ask any follow-up questions, just assumed Savannah was telling the truth and I was some kind of monster. When I tried one more time to explain what actually happened, her mom cut me off. We don't want to hear your excuses, Ashton. Stay away from our daughter. They hung up and I stood there in this empty office building, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Savannah hadn't just poisoned our mutual friends against me. She'd turned her own family into weapons. These people who'd welcomed me into their home and talked about future holidays together now thought I was dangerous. I blocked both their numbers and got back to work. What else was I going to do? Drive over there and try to convince them their daughter was a manipulative liar? That would just prove their point about me being unstable. Then my phone rang immediately after, and it was my mom calling from back home. She sounded worried in that way parents do when they hear something concerning about their kids. Hey, honey, we heard what happened with Savannah. Are you okay? I wasn't sure how much they knew or what version of events they'd gotten. My parents live about 3 hours away and don't really keep up with local gossip, so someone must have specifically reached out to them. Turns out my Aunt Carol, who lives in town, had heard the story through her church group and called my mom to check if they knew about my situation. The version that had reached my parents was that I'd had some kind of breakdown and done something terrible to my girlfriend during a fight. I explained what actually happened, that I'd overheard Savannah admitting she was using me to make her ex jealous, and I'd decided to end things immediately. My mom was quiet for a long time after I told her the real story. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We were worried you were having some kind of crisis. My dad got on the phone and was pissed. Not at me, but at the fact that people were spreading lies about his son without knowing the facts. He wanted to know if I needed him to come down and set the record straight with anyone. I told him it wasn't worth it, and that the truth would come out eventually. They were relieved to hear I was doing fine, and that I'd handled the situation maturely. My mom said she'd never really warmed up to Savannah during the few times they'd met anyway. Said something had felt off about how she talked about other people behind their backs. That phone call made me realize how far Savannah's victim story had spread. She'd managed to turn a simple breakup into town gossip that reached people 3 hours away. The fact that my own aunt had heard some twisted version of events and felt the need to call my parents showed just how effectively she'd poisoned the well. The rest of the week was quiet. No more angry phone calls, no more dramatic social media posts that I heard about. I figured maybe Savannah had finally gotten tired of playing victim and moved on to whatever came next in her life. I was wrong. Friday night, I was at home watching TV when I got a notification on Instagram. Message request from an account I didn't recognize. The profile picture was some random landscape photo, and the username was just a bunch of numbers. Obvious fake account. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me curious. Opened it up, and there was Savannah's writing style clear as day. The message was long and rambling, talking about how sorry she was and how I'd misunderstood everything. She claimed the conversation I'd overheard was taken out of context and that she'd never actually meant to hurt me. Said she'd been confused about her feelings, but realized now that what we had was real. Classic manipulation tactics. Trying to rewrite history and make me doubt what I'd heard with my own ears. She was probably hoping that a week of radio silence had made me miss her enough to overlook the whole using me to make her ex jealous thing. The message ended with her asking if we could meet up to talk things through like adults. She wanted to explain everything and show me how wrong I'd been about the situation. Promised that if I just gave her a chance, she could make me understand what really happened. I read it twice just to make sure I wasn't missing anything important. Nope, just more lies and manipulation from someone who thought I was stupid enough to fall for it again. But then came the final message that really showed who Savannah was underneath all the fake apologies. That's why I chose Noah, because he's actually mature. And there it was. When the sweet manipulation didn't work, she went straight for the personal attack, trying to make me feel like I'd lost out to a better man, instead of admitting that she'd been caught playing games. I blocked the fake account and went back to my TV show. Some people never learn that actions have consequences. They just keep trying the same manipulative tactics over and over, hoping eventually they'll find someone desperate enough to fall for it. Wasn't gonna be me. Things went completely silent after that. No more messages through mutual friends, no more dramatic social media posts that people told me about, no more angry family members calling to yell at me. Just blessed peace and quiet. My friends stopped asking about the Savannah situation after the first week. Most of them had moved on to other drama anyway. The few who actually knew me well had figured out pretty quick that her story didn't add up. Henry even admitted that he'd started questioning things when he realized I'd never shown any signs of anger problems in all the years we'd been friends. The whole thing was becoming ancient history, which was exactly how I wanted it. Saturday morning, I was in my garage organizing tools and planning out the next phase of my kitchen project. Had some music playing, coffee going, perfect way to start the weekend. Around 10 a.m., I heard a car pull into my driveway. Wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured it was probably my neighbor wanting to borrow something. I walked outside and there was Savannah getting out of her car. She looked like complete hell. Hair was a mess. Dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't been sleeping much. Wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt instead of the carefully put-together outfits she usually wore. This wasn't the confident woman who'd been playing games with two men at once. This was someone who'd been crying a lot recently. She saw me and immediately started walking toward my front door like she belonged there. I stayed where I was in the garage doorway, not moving to meet her halfway or make this easier for her. She started talking about needing 5 minutes to explain, how I didn't understand the full situation, the usual manipulation tactics, trying to make me doubt what I'd heard with my own ears 2 weeks ago. Said there was context I'd missed, and that I'd only heard part of the conversation. I wasn't buying any of it. Told her I understood plenty about being used as a placeholder boyfriend. That's when the real reason for her visit came out. Noah had dumped her again. Her master plan had blown up in her face, and now she was back to square one with no boyfriend and no backup plan. The story was exactly what you'd expect. For about a week, Noah had been all interested and talking about getting back together. Then his ex-coworker broke up with her boyfriend, and suddenly Noah didn't have time for Savannah anymore. He'd used her interest to make his own ex jealous, just like she'd been doing to me. The irony was incredible. She'd spent 6 months using me to manipulate Noah, and then got played by the exact same game. She started getting more desperate then, talking about how she'd realized how good she had it with me, how much I'd cared about her, and how stupid she'd been to risk that for someone who didn't deserve her. Said I'd been right there loving her, and she'd thrown it away for a fantasy. But that's not what happened. She didn't throw anything away because she never valued it in the first place. She'd been pretending while waiting for something better to come along. When I pointed that out, she started crying. Real tears this time, not the fake dramatic stuff she'd probably used on her parents. This was someone realizing that the consequences of their actions were permanent and there was no talking their way out of it. She wanted to try again, to work things out. Said we'd had something good and could get back to that. But we'd never had anything good. We'd had something fake where she was acting the whole time. Too late for that. I turned around and walked back into my garage, hit the button to close the door. Could hear her calling my name through the garage door, probably expecting me to come back out and continue the conversation. I went into my house through the connecting door and watched from my kitchen window. She stood there for maybe 5 more minutes, knocking on my front door and calling my name. When she finally realized I wasn't coming back out, she got in her car and sat there for another 10 minutes, just staring at my house. Finally drove away half an hour later. The whole thing lasted maybe 15 minutes, but it felt like closure. Seeing her desperate and alone after everything she'd put me through was exactly the confirmation I needed that walking away had been the right choice. Some people only value what they have after they lose it, but by then it's too late to matter. I figured that was the end of it. She'd played her last card, and it didn't work. Most normal people would take that as a sign to move on with their lives and learn from their mistakes. Savannah is not most people. Sunday morning, I woke up to find a handwritten letter shoved under my front door. Must have been dropped off sometime during the night because it wasn't there when I went to bed. The envelope just had my name written on it in her handwriting. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was 3 pages long, rambling, and desperate. She was trying every manipulation tactic in the book. Started with more fake apologies about how sorry she was and how she'd made terrible mistakes. Then moved into trying to rewrite history again, claiming that what we had was real and special, even if she'd been confused about her feelings. The middle part was her trying to make me feel guilty, talking about how much she was suffering and how she couldn't eat or sleep since Noah rejected her. Said she'd been having panic attacks and her friends were worried about her mental health. Classic victim playing, designed to make me feel responsible for her problems. The end was pure desperation. She was begging me to just talk to her for 10 minutes so she could explain everything properly. Promised that if I gave her one chance, she could make me understand that we belonged together. Said she'd changed and learned from her mistakes and would never hurt me again. It was actually kind of pathetic reading it. This was the same woman who'd been so confident about playing two men against each other just a few weeks ago. Now she was reduced to writing multi-page letters and sneaking around my house at night like some kind of stalker. I threw the letter in the trash and went about my Sunday. Had some coffee, worked on my kitchen renovation, watched football. Normal, peaceful weekend stuff without any drama or manipulation. Monday brought another surprise. My buddy Henry called me around lunch, bursting out laughing. Apparently, Kelly had gotten a call from Savannah asking if she could get Henry to convince me to talk to her. Savannah was trying to use our mutual friends as intermediaries, since I'd blocked her everywhere else. Kelly told her absolutely not, and that she needed to leave everyone alone and move on. Said Savannah started crying on the phone and begging Kelly to help her because she'd lost the love of her life over a misunderstanding. Kelly hung up on her. Henry thought the whole thing was hilarious. He said Kelly was pissed that Savannah had tried to drag them into her drama and make them feel responsible for fixing her mess. Apparently, Kelly had finally figured out that Savannah's victim story didn't add up and was annoyed that she'd believed it in the first place. Tuesday, I got a text from an unknown number. Obviously, Savannah using someone else's phone or a burner app to try to reach me one more time. The message was short and showed exactly who she really was, underneath all the fake apologies. "You're going to regret this. I hope you end up alone." And there it was. When all the manipulation failed, when the tears and letters and friend interventions didn't work, she showed her true colors. The mask finally came off completely and revealed the bitter, entitled person who thought she deserved to use people without consequences. I screenshotted the message and blocked that number too. But honestly, getting that text was almost satisfying. It proved that everything I'd done was justified. This wasn't someone who was genuinely sorry or had learned from her mistakes. This was someone who was angry that their manipulation hadn't worked and was lashing out like a child throwing a tantrum. The contrast was incredible. 3 weeks ago, she was confident and in control, playing games with two men and bragging to her coworker about how well her plan was working. Now she was writing desperate letters, begging mutual friends for help, and sending angry texts when nothing worked. She'd gone from thinking she had all the power to having none at all, from having two men interested in her to being completely alone, from being the manipulator to being the one getting manipulated and rejected. And the best part? I didn't have to do anything except walk away. I didn't need some elaborate revenge plan or public humiliation. I just refused to be her backup plan and let her destroy herself with her own choices.